welcome back for another fun Power Hour podcast. I am your host, Alden Antonucci, and I've got a fun group of people here that we're going to talk about the April 8th eclipse that's happening here in just a couple weeks. And if anyone doesn't know, we're actually located in Bozeman, Montana, so it's kind of okay, where do we fall in that eclipse? And something tells me, what are we, around 30-40%? Is that what it was?
I think you said 40%.
40%. Mm-hmm. So we're going to barely see it. And I know we were talking a little bit on the last podcast, an episode, about when an eclipse happens. Obviously, the moon is coming in between the sun and the earth. And then we're getting this cold sensation, obviously, because we're not feeling anything, from the sun and the UV rays, stuff like that. But you know what, Seth, you brought up some good, interesting points about the last time it happened. What else was going on besides it just kind of getting cold?
Well, I was taking photos, and while doing that...
And what year was that?
This is 2017.
Got it, the last one.
Rexburg, Idaho was the totality path closest to us. And during the day, we were in a park. I was getting set up, just a normal park. I have a whole bunch of people there waiting for it, families, kids, dogs, all barking, and kids playing, and birds chirping. Planes were flying around. And then when it was the time, when it did get started, and it didn't get dark, obviously, all at once, it just kind of was only dark for about 2 minutes plus a few seconds. But as it was getting dark, you could tell that it was starting to get a little chillier. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know because I was busy doing something else until it really got dark. And then when it really got dark, I went, oh, it's kind of chilly. And then I look around, and the green grass that we were on had this kind of weird blue color. Everything was quiet. Nobody was saying ooh or whatever. They were just mesmerized, I guess. Everybody was just staring. And you didn't have to have your glasses on for those 2 minutes, because the moon and the sun are the exact same size, or appear to be the same size. And some people say you can see stars. Sirius maybe be one of them, being the brightest. But it was really cool. And then it goes off, and then everybody moves out of the way, and then you have to put your glasses back on if you want to see the rest of it. If we were to see it from here, the only way you could see it is with those glasses.
Right.
And then you might be able to see 40% of that eclipse.
Interesting.
But if you just to look at the sun during the time that it was supposed to happen without those glasses, I mean, you're not supposed to, but how you sometimes kind of glance and you squint, you go like this, and you look at the little, then you'd just see the sun. That's it.
Right.
You wouldn't even see anything. You wouldn't see a little kind of a
You wouldn't.
shave.
Well, Dave,
not at that point. If you get 80%,
use a welding helmet.
80% maybe.
Use a welding helmet.
Welding helmet. There you go.
That might be.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, you're kind of bringing up some different concepts about frequencies and vibration, the whole 9 yards, with maybe that sun, with the moon going in front of the sun, it actually affects the frequencies.
Well, if it's, let's say a cloud's crossing in front of the sun, a really thick cloud, you still get a lot of radiation through that cloud.
Mm-hmm.
You still get the UV rays and all kinds of other frequencies of rays that you probably can't detect, but they're coming through. However, when the moon was a solid object goes in front of it, I don't think those UV rays penetrate the moon.
Mm.
And that's why I believe it's cold, because we're missing a whole bunch of the frequencies. The broad spectrum of what the sun puts out is probably beyond my comprehension as far as the different frequencies of radiation that's hitting us. But when it's gone, you surely notice it. So that's what we were talking about.
Like you said, I think last time, all waves have frequencies, and when you take out some of those waves from the sun because the moon's in front of it, doesn't that change the frequency that we receive on Earth.
would block it.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know that
an interesting
it wouldn't
point.
change the frequency,
Oh,
but
okay, yeah, it would be.
it would certainly block it. And that's why we have radio waves. We're trying to communicate using skip waves, which is waves bouncing between the surface of the planet and the atmosphere. The sunspots affect those dramatically. And what's a sunspot?
A flare from the sun.
Yeah, it's when you view it with a telescope with filters on it, it appears to be dark.
Oh,
I
you're
was gonna
talking
say
about
it
a
looks
coronal
black.
hole?
Yeah.
A coronal, yeah.
The
A coronal hole
sunspot.
is dark.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
Which is
yeah.
different from a flare.
The sunspots are where the flares
Yeah.
Yeah.
originate from, but the
black.
the coronal hole is the darker part.
And that,
It's
I
the
believe,
spot.
changes
Well,
the radiation
Well, and that, it also causes geomagnetic storms.
and all kinds of other things
Or
that we don't
earthquakes.
understand.
EMP. It could
So-
be an EMP.
Yeah, like the Carrington event. in
Here's
1859.
a fun little tidbit of information is in Alaska. Remember that big earthquake, 1964?
64?
Guess what happened right 40 days before that?
CME, coronal
What?
mass ejection. Solar flare.
And an eclipse.
Yeah.
So they say whenever there's a okay, the Philippines, remember that whole earthquake? Massive. Philippines, India, remember it killed like 500,000 people or 250,000 people? Big tsunami, big earthquake. Guess what happened? 40 days before.
Really?
Japan, guess what happened? 40 days before.
So what's 40 days from April 8th?
So what they're saying
Or-
is, if we want to go down the rabbit hole, which we all love to do, is they're saying with the path of totality, right, going all the way, let's imagine Mexico City to Maine, and you draw a straight line. That's more or less kind of what it's going through.
Right.
Illinois is the whole 9 yards. They're saying that there's a massive fault line right there where that city that's called Rapture, 2017 eclipse, and the intersection of the eclipse that's going to happen on April 8th.
So you think there's going to be an earthquake?
well, right, and I'm not the one saying it.
Well, and also, as we were referencing the Jonah story, what happened right before that Jonah stuff happened, there was also an eclipse.
Right,
And how long was Jonah in the whale?
40
3
days.
No,
It was 3 days.
How long ago? I think
Oh.
you're talking about.
Oh,
how many
yeah.
years ago?
No.
How long was
Oh,
it?
40
okay.
days.
Was he
Yeah.
in for 40? I thought it was 3 days
Well, it depends.
on.
Well, so yes.
Which version of the Bible are you reading?
Well, so
The one he wrote.
that's right. And so, have you ever watched The Simpsons?
Oh, yeah.
About that one?
He's his
Oh,
own
I haven't
commentator.
Right.
I'm gonna have to look up what episode that one is because my kids love The Simpsons and
Yeah, that one's a really fun episode. So it actually talks about the whole eclipse.
tell us about it.
So,
Please.
so to give you a quick summary about it, there was a political figure, and he was with one of his mistresses, and his Christian limo driver
I saw that
disappeared. Boom, like that quick. And that would be in Christian terms, that would be called the
one. Okay.
rapture.
Right.
Right. And so that's basically like being twinkled, like he disappeared.
In the blink of
right?
an eye.
In the blink of an eye. And they're saying, okay, well, when did that happen? Okay, that happened 40 days. And they actually show the math in The Simpsons because Homer Simpson was doing all the math. And it came up with 40 days after the eclipse. And so they're saying actually May 18th is supposed to be, let's call it an earthquake. There's going to be that 40 days of basically peace or the people to repent of Nineveh. Back to the
Like
story
the
of Jonas.
outpouring of the Spirit. Those that feel the Spirit are going to.
Can you
call
look
it.
up when Mount St. Helens blew?
Ooh, that's a good one. To know. 82,
Yeah, no,
right?
what
One.
month and year?
81.
Oh, and was
month
there
and
an
day?
eclipse around that time?
I don't recall.
Because I think it was May something that it happened.
81, I believe.
Yeah, looks like that one happened. Back in 81. Yeah, 1981. Very interesting. And so it'd be interesting to know is, like you're saying, what about the eclipse at that point in time? Now, I'm not saying every volcano, every earthquake is related exactly to an eclipse, but what is interesting to note is every time there is an eclipse, they're having a world war.
What about full moon?
World War One.
We just
World
had
War
that
II.
full moon and the lunar eclipse Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
You see it?
26th.
Was it the 26th?
March 26th or 28th?
I thought it was the 24th, but I don't.
Oh.
I don't know. All my days were.
Oh,
together.
25th.
Whatever.
Oh, it was 1980 to be exact.
80.
Mount St. Helens.
Is it what month?
The exact day of Mount St. Helens eruption was May 18th, 1980.
Oh.
No way.
No way. You can't
Hold
make,
on. Let's see when the eclipse was.
Can't make this up.
And what year was that? 82.
Oh, so what happened on April 8th, 1980?
Well, that would be interesting.
So there was
Eclipses
a total. Yeah. Let's. Oh
of
man.
1980.
Guys.
And it's probably just a coincidence.
By the way, that's 44
Total
years.
coinky dink.
There
Total
is
quinky
no
dinkies.
coincidence. Or no such thing.
Right.
It's all related.
And it all relates back to a pyramid in the middle of a desert. That still doesn't make sense today.
Let's see. There was a. Oh.
That is pretty odd.
That is pretty
You
odd.
got
I
this
can't believe
beautiful
that just
structure, the
happened.
biggest in the world, and it's out in the middle of a desert.
So that
So-
kind of goes back to.
It's a ley line.
So I got solar eclipses of 1979 to 1982. And oddly enough,
What was in 79?
or 8.
well, there's obviously quite a few eclipses.
Well, I know there was one on 1988 because I was born on a solar eclipse.
88?
1988, March 18th, 1988 was a total solar eclipse because I was,
Another 18.
yes, the eights, infinity.
You know, that's a divine number. 1 plus 8 equals 9.
Uh-huh.
3, 6, 9.
So
According
there
to
is-
Tesla.
There is another one on April 8th, 1980.
There was?
Yeah,
You're
but
kidding.
I no.
No
But
joke.
I got to find out where it crosses. And if it went over Mount St. Helens,
That's interesting because
yeah.
you know how you guys were talking about how the moon basically is shutting off the frequencies from the sun, right?
Blocking the radiation.
Blocking, right? So obviously that would have an effect on our
Absolutely.
geomagnetic. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's interesting
It would
thought
also
to think about.
You would also lose your way because of your
Or find your way.
Your geolocator working
would
properly.
be. Well, that's what the north and the south poles are shifting.
That'll be a few thousand years before that.
Yeah, but
happens.
it's
think?
shifting now because it's shifting a little bit now. Whales and such and
I've heard-
porpoise are
I've heard that.
their geo whatever
Locators
inside of them
malfunctioning.
are based off of the electromagnetism of the poles.
poles, yeah.
We're like
Sure.
a torus, type of thing.
Sure.
So that magnetic field is driving them to go to a certain area, or they know that is.
Yeah, why
has
do
been
hummingbirds
north,
fly south all
and
the
now
time?
they're going north into the beach instead of north into the ocean.
Which
and
we're
not
seeing
south.
that. Have you guys noticed there? I just recently, I think it was down in Florida or somewhere. There was whales that were
Beaching
just washed.
themselves?
Yeah, they were just beaching themselves.
Recently.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, they think they're going up the coastline, and instead they're hitting the coast because it's just ever so slightly shifting
Right.
enough
Right.
to.
Well, and isn't
cause
the moving of the magnetic poles? It's accelerating
Yeah.
as
Yes.
it.
went-
Yeah.
How would you ever measure that?
Well, actually,
It's happened
I know
before.
the math on that. You
I don't
wanna
know how
the
they
math on
measure
that?
It's happened, I believe,
26,000.
43 times
Mm,
in the Earth's history of 4.5 billion years.
Only? Three
Yeah,
times?
43 times.
Oh, 43 times. I was like, I thought you
yeah,
said
it
3. I was like,
happens
Yeah.
quite often.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
so
we're
it's
in
not
the.
an unusual thing.
So
but
it traditionally moves around 60 miles a year. In the last year and a half, it's moved like 280 miles.
How's that measured?
Right now, it's
Compass?
located in Siberia.
I believe it's also the internal mantle that's that there's floating around is what's causing that shift.
And for some reason, it's accelerated basically 3 or 4 times.
It's all about the
fold
consciousness of
normal,
the human mind, of the human
right?
condition,
Well,
the populace of the earth.
you know how our Earth's axis is rotated or is It's not perfectly straight.
Oh, tilted.
Tilted.
On
That's the
23 and a
word.
half degree,
Yes.
yeah.
Is that why I walk in circles all the time?
Yeah.
Well, that
Thought my
makes
leg
sense.
was shorter.
Yeah.
Now you think about the sunspots, and it appears to be just a small little speck from here, and yet that affects radio communication across the planet dramatically. So I'm with you. I think any variation in the amount of radiation coming out of the sun of any frequency is very much affected by physical objects that are blocking it, or maybe some internal issues in the sun itself.
Well, don't the sun's poles flip as well every 11 years or something?
They've said that. Well,
The cycle,
yeah.
the sunspot cycle is 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the radio people, we very much pay attention to that, because when it's at low cycle, communication is very poor on the skip wave. You can still talk to your neighbor 10 miles away. Oops, I messed your camera up there, buddy. But every 11 years, and then when it's on its high side of the cycle, you can talk to Australia with low power. So that's quite a bit of difference. Whatever's in the atmosphere.
Is it charged at that point? The
Yeah.
ionosphere has more energy.
Yeah. And my grandfather would tell me that we can't see these things. And that's why it's difficult for us to understand them. He said if we could just paint the radio waves with some dark color, we
Be a
could
lot
see what's
easier.
happening.
That's really interesting because there you bring in a really good thought about that I'm having about science and religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it, all the biblical prophecies are really in line with the scientific part of like the magnetic field and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it actually all aligns together,
Sure.
and that's where you're talking about like you can't see it, but it's been prophesied to us because
Sure.
because the ancients who wrote these texts for us, they wanted their future generations
They've
to be
experienced it for years.
they wanted to be prepared for like the pole shifting. What does that mean? You what is it, Matthew 24 that talks about the cloud will be rolled back as a scroll? Well, if you follow Suspicious Observers on YouTube, he talks about the pole shift and how essentially, if maybe don't quote me on this, but I think the atmosphere continues to move and the earth like temporarily like stops for a second or something. So can you imagine like the slosh back of the oceans with something like that occurring? And you're talking about like a Noah type flood.
Depending on how
something.
dramatic it is.
Right.
If it happens over 50 years, I don't know how dramatic it would be.
You're saying that the Earth actually stops its
Well, that's why I said
motion?
don't totally
Or
quote
you're
me on
saying
it. I'm-
if it was to stop.
Well,
For that
you'd have to
anytime.
go follow. There's a lot of scientific backing information that Ben Davidson, he's down in Colorado, and he's actually building Observer Ranch, which he's claiming he's kind of like the Noah of the day, and he's basically saying, I'm going to build this ranch because I believe that only these people in these certain parts are more likely to survive this upcoming cataclysmic event, because this is like a known like event that happens every 26,000 years where the poles actually flip. And then so first what happens is there's like a big solar flare from the sun that basically, is released that he's, predicting is going to knock us off our electrical grids, kind of like the Carrington event of 1859. And then once that happens, as the poles get to a certain point, there's going to be like this instantaneous where they just totally like shift, and then it displaces I don't.
You're saying instantaneous in 1 second?
Well, and yeah, over I think
within a day or
within
a few hours.
yeah, something like that. But I mean, you can go to and check
Within
out his
12
stuff.
to
It's like
24
hours and hours of information. I actually have the book, and I haven't done my homework. And Ben would be
you're
super
talking
disappointed.
About when the poles are shifting.
Yeah.
There is going to be that short amount of time where everything.
But you're talking physically.
Physically.
In
Yeah.
reality.
In reality.
But let's talk about the possibility that that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if this planet of
The planet won't stop moving, but
So that's
the
what I'm asking.
internal part is going to shift.
let's
Right.
go one
This
level.
is kind of the prediction that she's referring to, is basically California being the water all the way up to Montana. We'll be okay here in Bozeman,
And that's
Montana.
been around a while.
been
Edgar
around a
Casey
while.
was
Well, no,
even-
the
Edgar
one
Casey
that's been
was the
around
one.
has just been the San Francisco section
Sure.
off of California.
But let's talk about the waves and the stuff we can't see. Because if the Earth came to a stop, we'd see it. It'd rip the Earth into
Yeah,
shreds.
yes, it would.
It would
Yeah,
blow up.
I think I misspoke. Like, I did not explain that very well.
But people say that. People, that theory's been out for a long time. I got a good friend that has that theory, and he believes that it's going to actually stop. But let me suggest something else. My grandfather was, born in 1909, so he's long gone. He knew about the pole shift before I was born. He studied it, and he's a radio guy. What I'm suggesting is perhaps the magnetic sphere, which you cannot see. It's there, but you cannot see it. The planet's going to stay the same, but that magnetic core, because the Earth's got some iron in there, and it's got a lot of stored energy. We don't know what frequencies they are, probably a lot, but this magnetic sphere inside the planet is going to reverse polarity.
And when it flips, it's just going to flip. It's not going to slowly go faster. It's just going to boom.
Well, it's like if you play with magnets, right? Where
Yes,
it gets to a certain
like
point
you
and it's
play
like,
with
boom.
magnets.
Yeah.
And
There's that nanosecond or the nano of a nanosecond.
It could,
Right,
it
where
could
it's
be
like,
that
A
fast.
blink of an eye.
Yeah.
My suggestion is that comes from the sun. That the sun's effect on us is causing that flip. And maybe it's even bigger than the sun. Maybe it's the universe. Because the sun isn't a single entity,
Right.
right? There's other suns out there.
Right.
Did they have pole shifts?
Well, each sun is a single entity.
Okay, did they have pole shifts?
Well,
Apparently, I didn't
assuming
know
they
the sun
did.
did, but
The
they
sun-
said
the sun
they
does.
did.
Okay,
Yeah.
so would
It's
the other
11-year
planets have
cycle.
the other?
I would. You would think so. I
Okay.
mean, kind of like
What causes that?
Well, you think
Well, it depends on the
it's
type
kinda
of planet,
liquid.
too.
Everything's
I mean,
liquid.
Let's
I don't
talk
know
about the
if it's a
suns.
gas planet versus.
Do all the suns in the universe have pole shift?
I'm assuming they do.
Why not?
Why are we? Why are we,
Why are we
different
special?
than anyone?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
We're not special.
So
Yeah.
maybe it's not just the sun that's going to cause the magnetic change. Maybe it's the whole universe. And by the way, it's
Well,
26,000 years.
Going to your point, and to the point that we're all connected, the universe is connected. We're all connected to the universe. We're all connected to ourselves. Whenever it's the quantum entanglement theory, where you change
tangled
one
up.
thing and in the
You bet.
exact same time,
Butterfly
not even it
flapping his
flips
wings.
the other thing. So when when the sun does its
Whatever's happening in
shifting,
there.
it may not cause another. All the other planets will. Everybody will know. Everything will know when that
Agreed.
happens in a vibrational frequency wave
Sure.
format,
Sure.
super consciously.
maybe whoever's playing the game is just moving
But
up to the next level.
It's
That doesn't
universal.
That doesn't mean that it's going to. I mean, we'll all notice it, but that doesn't mean it's going to cause a different pole shift in some other sun.
Right.
If one sun does it, but I don't know if that answers.
Let's
your
talk
question.
about radio waves
It's
for a
gonna
second.
affect everything else.
Radio waves, my grandfather would study radio waves, and he would write down the propagation of radio waves. In other words, what time of day do waves bounce? What time of the year do waves bounce? What part of the 11-year cycle do they bounce best in? And that's called wave propagation. How big are waves? Waves have different sizes. He has all this stuff down. And I asked him, I didn't know about waves. I said, now, wait a minute. Like a CB radio, it skips up and down, bouncing off something, right? He said, right. He said, that's their theory. I said, it doesn't bounce? He said, do you think there's skip on the moon? I had to think about that for a while. I said, is there skip on the moon? He said, there's skip across the entire universe. And I said, what affects it? He said, we don't know. But it's not just contained on this planet.
I have a theory.
And the theory that current theory of why waves bounce is called the heaviside layer theory. My grandfather doesn't believe this, but the heaviside layer theory says that in the F layer, they measure the layers around the Earth, A, B, C, D, E, F. And the F layer is such and such height, 25 miles. And the radio waves bounce off the ground, which is neutral or negative, and hits the sky, which is generally positive, especially if there's an atmosphere. This is a heaviside theory. And then the waves bounce like this all around the planet. My grandfather says that's not how it works. That's just their theory. He said there's no heaviside out there. Now, what the common theory is when the sun disappears, the F layer splits in half. And F1 on the bottom, F2 on the top. And F1 is less dense than F2 when they combine at night. In other words, the planet turns, the sun's no longer hitting us. The two layers combine and it becomes thicker. My grandfather said that's all false. It's the whole universe, and it changes simultaneously, or at least at light speed, throughout the universe. So I said, so basically we could have radio communications in the low frequencies on another planet if the band was skipping. He said, yes, that's right. Now that's very contradictory to what scientists believe today, that this globe has a layer above it and the radio waves are bouncing between the heavy side and the Earth's surface. Grandfather says, no, it's the universe. It isn't a layer that's heavy. So radio waves, like you said, if we could paint them, we'd see what was going on. Without that, we have to use our imagination.
Sensors.
And we know what? We all have an imagination, and our opinions is just as good as anybody else's.
Right.
So we get to discuss these things. Nobody can see radio waves. Let's talk about a brick. Put a brick on a glass table. Put a big woofer underneath the bottom of it. Run that thing up, a lot of power through that. What happens to the brick?
Start hovering.
Vibrate.
How come?
Frequencies.
What's
Are matching.
You can't see it. What's touching it?
Cymatic frequencies, basically. Yeah, like you said, you can't really see it.
Can't see it. So what's happening there? Is there something pushing the brick?
Oh,
Or just placement.
you know, what I'm understanding is that there's a certain frequency, whether it's a sound frequency or vibration or a wave frequency, that is repelling, that is that is 180 degrees from what the brick is, causing it to levitate or to vibrate, to go up, which brings me to the another point, back to the pyramids. How did these big, huge 70-ton stones get put in there?
They had woofers.
I think that they had a bunch of woofers in their hands, miniaturized woofers that they used to crank up, and they could have different people, you know, some pushing, some pulling, some
That's
going
What
up.
if they were using
good.
the
I love it.
voices?
And
Yeah, I was going to say, don't you
or
have a
certain
woofer
words,
right here?
you know.
How is human created according to the Bible? God
Spoke it into existence.
Yeah, little
So you use
432
these
ohm
things to
frequencies.
move things anti-gravitationally.
Right.
just like
And that's anti-gravitational.
But why do
what
we
you
have
just
gravity though?
explained.
Because
Because Joe Biden signed it.
It's
Executive order.
Bidenomics. It just does. It just works.
my theory is that we only our belief systems determine our reality. So if you had never been taught about gravity, could you fly? If you were born and nobody ever said, "Oh, don't jump off that," maybe you jump off and you just soar through the air.
If you want to test that, I'll bring a camera.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
But how could you know? Because we're no one in our reality has had that experience.
Does gravity
Well,
come
maybe
from
it's
above
because
or below?
their frequency, they don't know how to change their frequency to that of whatever, because you could do
Which
that
brings-
of a bird, or lighter than air frequency.
Which brings me to
or
Jesus'
vibration.
teachings of if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain, right?
I don't know if it's a faith. I think it's more of that you can create yourself in the same.
I feel like that
vein.
must be the.
You could walk through if you knew the actual frequency of that wall,
Mm.
and your body could match that frequency. You could walk right through.
Displacing your molecules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a guy somewhere that was able to put his hands up in a little cave about that when he was standing. It would be about a foot above, and when he was done, there was an imprint of his hand. So
have you heard of
melted
the
it.
Celestine prophecy?
I think I read that.
The secrets of Shambhala, or the
been a while.
Yeah, they talked about. So there was a city up in the. Oh gosh, where's the tallest mountain? Where Everest is, over
Everest.
in those mountains, and there's these monks over there, and there's these old, dilapidated like monasteries, and this guy's out there with a group of people, and this is a whole series, but essentially what happens is he is able to raise his vibration high enough to match where these people are living in this basically other dimensional city called Shambhala, which is similar to what we were discussing Telos earlier, I think before we started recording, about how there's a city under Mount Shasta, but essentially that there's this belief that there's layers of dimensions based on what frequency you're vibrating in. So this Shambhala is that as you raise your frequency, you're in a higher state of awareness, or in these individuals, that was what they would do. They had this dome or whatever, but they could walk through it because they were essentially just displacing their, they could adjust their frequency to go in between.
Now,
The way Spider-Man goes bzzz through
Something
things
like that.
He
so
creates the
if we
vibration.
want to get back into the scriptures, that's
The
considered
flash,
the
that's it.
Merkaba. So the Merkaba is
Your light
more,
body.
Yeah, the light body that's around you. Your
Your very
It's a
own
vehicle.
space. Yeah, exactly. Your very own space
etheric-
vessel.
your etheric field that's around your body. So have you heard of the Shekinah?
No. Oh yeah. the
Shekinah?
Shekinah.
Shakana.
Right.
Up.
And
That's another aspect of God.
Yeah.
correct. So the
The
Merkaba,
feminine aspect.
The feminine.
right, and that's how you travel. And so imagine us walking. We're in our Merkaba, right? That's our aura. That's our chakra. That's all kind of in like a big bubble. When people say "get out of my bubble," it's like get out of my aura field. And the Shekinah is that ability of way it travels through. So you don't have to have your nose and your finger match those frequencies. It's the all around Merkaba. Does that make sense? And so it's kind of like that's how they say UFOs travel
So
through those mediums.
to circle that back to this whole eclipse, I wonder if this eclipse is, the powers that be that have kept, if you think about it, this information, like stuff we're talking about right now, it's not common. Not everyday person is talking about this kind of thing, but it's coming more into our awareness and more people are learning about it, right? Well, what if this eclipse is that interruption from the sun is like this reset button that's allowing everyone to access this inner knowledge, that we have these abilities to use this Merkaba.
Too easy.
Why? But why? What's wrong with too easy?
It's almost going like
Nothing
this.
wrong with too easy. It's just too easy.
Right. You'd say it'd be like clicking your fingers and
Yeah.
saying coming out of that state of, let's
No,
call it hypnosis.
I
and
think it's
we'll
not
wake up.
hard. It's not easy. It's hard, but it's not easy. Or it's easy, but it's also hard. Because you have to do the work to get to the point where you can actually
so
be
that's
in that frequency.
so if you
If
look
you
at
can't just
right, what was Jesus trying to show us? If you think about it, like we say that he died and resurrected, but maybe he didn't die. Maybe he just shifted his frequency and was able to shift it back down.
it's called
Maybe that's
ascending.
what-
A lot
is
of
it-
people call that ascending,
Right.
and that he
Transcendence.
was no. Well, yeah, I'm going to go into some weird thing, but your soul, when it ascends, or after it incarnates so many times, it becomes knowledgeable in wisdom that it then instead has a choice of either incarnating, but it's been doing all it because it's learned its lessons finally, and it can have a chance to go back to the source where it came from. And when that happens, it is called ascending back. You're ascending back to the original source where you came from.
Right.
Redemption.
'Cause your soul originally came from a source, and it goes back to that source. And when that happens, then Jesus could have been, his soul could have been that ascension. So his body, forget the body,
Right.
but that the soul can keep on talking. There's a bunch of people that channel different entities, group entities, single entities, and
Jesus.
Judah. There's 12. There's
Lucifer.
there's Arcturians. There's no, I don't think there's. I haven't heard that one. Maybe Satan.
Maybe not intentionally.
Yeah,
Got the same number of letters.
going down.
Everything's got a bandwidth, right?
That's
The
right.
Same with colors.
It's 8. Jesus and Lucifer are 8.
But once you ascend, you change your frequency so that you can go to ascend to whatever. Now you don't have to go back to the Creator. You can, but you can ascend to any other dimension you want to.
Well, imagine if there were some
the
beings on
12
a
that we
planet
know
somewhere
of.
that had been told that they were so unworthy and less than, that because they had this concept in their mind, they got stuck. They couldn't find their way out. What if those other ascended beings decided, hey, I'm going to go try to help these other souls that are stuck here and show them that, hey, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Through me, meaning yourself, finding, as you were saying, doing the work within yourself of remembering what it is that you truly are, instead of a concept that these royal lineage families devised to control an entire group of beings and keep them enslaved for eons. Just an
Yeah.
idea. I don't know.
But it's also in the Gnostic aspect of Christianity, they talk more of the way of finding the way to ascend and how to ascend well when you do die. It's more of this is the way to live so that when you die, you're a better person. So when you die, your soul is in a better condition. And so you have more positive, you left the negativity. So there's a lot of what you're talking about in that.
I like it.
But I believe that the Gnostics were talking about the way Jesus was describing to them the way the way they were looking at the way as the way of living to end up after you die. So like preparing living your life in a way that when you die, then it'll be an ascension type of a death instead of negative things. So
what if, knowing that the Earth goes through this 26,000 year cycle, and it goes through this
it's a wobble.
Or wobble, okay, this but essentially we all agree that it's probably a pretty cataclysmic experience that would be pretty hard to survive, right?
How so?
Well, it's not a cataclysmic
How would they
thing,
not survive?
although-
You're kind of talking about like Noah's flood.
Like Noah's flood, you're right. Yeah. I mean, so if you, it
is positioning itself differently. The sun is being positioned differently. I mean, you have the Earth that's going like this around something, but it's also going
Tipping
around
as it's going.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I can't really do it like that, but it's pretend this is spinning and it's spinning
On a
like
wobble.
this so
Like
it's
an ellipse.
wobbling.
Yeah.
So like you spin the top, and then when it's going to stop, it starts wobbling.
Getting
It's
out of
that-
balance.
Yeah, at that point where it starts to wobble, that angle of degree is what the Earth ends up doing every 25,920 years. But that does not necessarily mean that there's going to be a cataclysmic, because we don't know when that 25,920 years began.
Good point.
right.
And it's just associated with astrology, with the zodiac signs.
How about glaciers?
Right
What
now,
about
we're
the
almost
Mayans?
we're coming
Where are
we're
the
coming
Mayans?
into the age of Aquarius,
Right.
or some people say we're in the age of Aquarius. But of that zodiacal circle of the Wobble.
Yeah, with the pyramids, when they were built and everything else, they actually didn't build them at the time for when they were built. They were actually built for us now. When you do some of the math
When
behind
do you
that.
say they were built?
Well, that's just it.
What year?
Because when you go to the polar star, right? We got a lot of theories on that one. But right now, if we're basically in layman's terms, you got the polar star, or you got Sirius, right? And the Earth sitting there spinning around Sirius, like what Seth's referring to. At that time, the pyramids were built, let's call it 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, what mainstream science says. It wasn't the polar star at that point. It was a different star system.
Polaris.
Yeah, it was a different star.
I think Vega.
Yeah. And so they're trying to more or less, when there's a cataclysm that happens, let's call it a Noah's flood kind of cataclysm, and there's only a couple people left, they can always fall back to the pyramid and look at the pyramid because it holds all the secrets. Does that make sense? Kind of the radius of the Earth and the diameter of the Earth, and even going back to the sun and the moon and
Like
the
a reference
size.
point? Is that what
All
you're
yeah,
saying?
including they call it the pyramid inch, which is very close to the inch that we use today. And then
Never
right,
heard of pyramid inch.
yeah, right down the street from
Cubic inch.
right, and still on the Giza plateau, you've got the pyramids, and then right down the street they've got the meter, the big block, and so they can constantly have that measurements with coordinates. Actually has north, west, south, east. You know what blocks I'm talking about that are right down the
labyrinth?
street.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's basically imagine like a big block, and then it's got coordinate points,
Okay.
and that's how they know it's true north.
Oh.
Yeah. So the pyramid was built to be kind of the center of the earth, if that makes sense at that point in time.
Interesting.
Well, it was also a good location because of the Nile, built over a water source
Right.
for communication, for teleportation, for using it as a power source.
What's the latitude?
The exact speed of light.
With the latitude?
29.9999, something like
Okay.
that.
Just
And
under
so-
30?
Yeah. So it's based.
Adam's calendar, we had talked about that down in southern Africa, is also at that latitude.
What's the longitude?
They're almost
30.
between Adam's
From
calendar and and Egypt. It's almost like straight down.
Because GMT is based on London
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of pyramid.
Yeah. And other coincidences is if you take the average elevation of the earth, you get 483 feet. And that's the height of the pyramid.
Yeah.
So if you use the pyramid then again as the,
Well, very close to it.
Very
Within,
close to it.
481.
yeah, I mean, and after every earthquake, I'm sure it changes a little bit there, but generally speaking.
I thought you said the actual height was 455.
Well, the capstone's off now, so yeah. So
Yeah,
454, I believe.
455.
454 something.
Yeah.
But remember what 483 is.
400, the frequency of the
Yeah,
pyramid.
it's the
resonant
frequency of the pyramid as well as the height, if you
Right.
count the cap at the top.
Yeah, before.
Yeah. You can't make the stuff up.
No, I did make it up, but you can't.
Like you said,
481.
the exact location of the moon in relation to the sun and the earth, and it being the exact same size, so it covers it up, kind of like putting a quarter right over your eye. I mean, what's the coincidence factor right
Divine
there?
design.
Well, you got to add a little bit of
Divine
variance
design.
because of the distortion of
It's
the
another
light.
book.
Right.
So you could probably add 10% either way. I'm just guessing.
Right.
But when you're looking at something that powerful with that much radiation coming out of it, it's going to be tough to say that the moon is exactly that size from this point.
No, but when you take, it's all an optical
Sure,
illusion.
absolutely.
When you're 400 miles away,
You bet.
or you're 400 times smaller than here from the Earth, and then the sun is 400 times further away from the moon.
Coincidence.
Everything you just kind of and you're pushing things farther away.
Sure.
It looks smaller. So when
It's tough to get exact.
That's why
when
it
you're-
looks, and that the moon is so close and the sun is so far that's why they're exact.
And you get that great corona coming out of there, and those color changes.
I had some nice pictures. Had I known we were going to do all of this, I would have brought some pictures to show you.
You'll have to bring
Throw
them
it
next
on
time.
Yeah, we'll have to have another
Oh,
episode.
you
of
do
that.
have a
actually,
screen up there. We
We
could
do.
put
We
'em
put it
up.
on
the
the
corona
screen.
around it with little red.
You can see the
flares.
spikes coming out of there.
Little red flares. Yeah.
You know who Steve Quayle is?
Steve Quayle.
Yeah. Back in the 80s, you'll correct me on this, there was a full eclipse, and he got a fantastic lens. It's called a Celestron. This is in the 80s. It was $1,000, maybe 70s. $1,000. That's a lot of money in the 70s. And he took a fantastic picture of the corona and all the spikes coming out of it. And he used infrared film, various kinds of different filters and stuff. He was really going crazy. But it was a quality photograph. I'm sure he sold it. It was a great photograph. Now, of course, they outdo that. And they've got camera equipment now that's just fantastic.
Celestron was a telescope
Do you remember that?
manufacturer. Yeah.
Remember that Celestron?
Yeah, they made for a camera.
Yeah.
They made
The little one, C90.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah,
big.
that was the C90.
Yeah.
It's, one he used was the Big Daddy.
Oh,
And we
okay.
sold
This
it.
was like a mirror lens. That's why it was really fat.
The C90's a mirror.
No. Yeah, it was a big, fat,
Yeah,
short
that's-
thing.
that's the 90.
versus the Newtonium, which is a very long tube. That you
That's
look down
no
the
mirror,
side.
yeah. The small tube is no mirror. The fat telescope that's that long has a mirror.
Well, they both have
Well,
mirrors
they
in there
but
so
the-
you can see. But yeah,
the mirror reverses
the
it.
lenses.
See?
Yeah.
When you're looking through a mirror, it's reversed, and it's upside down when you're looking. It's
The
at
lenses do that.
But the mirror is a way to make a big telescope smaller, and he had the big one, the C1000.
Ooh.
When you're talking about is a C90, you can put that right on a camera. It's a fantastic
The
lens.
reason why they did that is because it's a double mirror system. Where
Yeah.
the Newtonium is a single mirror. You look through as
Right.
a mirror through the optics.
And it would be that long.
This is you're looking through a mirror that looks through a mirror that goes
Sure.
back out.
Yeah, that's why they call them mirrors. And it would be that long to get that kind of magnification, and you don't want to hold a deal that
Yeah,
long.
they had a 500 millimeter lens that was like that, and that's about. I was using a 600 millimeters.
That's
so-
big.
And there are other people that were using Nikons up
Sure.
to 500 millimeter lenses and 600. Those
Sure.
are the general ones.
Well,
that
have you
they
seen
use.
people that take pictures of the stars with their cameras?
Yeah, but those you're not using big
It
lenses. You're using wide
looks like
angle.
water cymatic frequencies through water.
Well, that's probably electronically magnified as opposed to optically magnified.
You're all the stars are emitting a light. It's just so far away that we can't see it. So when you take a nighttime photo, you're exposing for a longer time to allow for that faint light
Sure.
to get brighter. Now, that brighter lights are going to be bright enough, so you have to balance the time, the length of the photo.
And
1
that's why
second,
the
5 seconds,
the
10
C1000's got a timer on it that actually moves it.
Oh,
In
yeah, there are
case you wanna
telescopes that you
do
can
the
that,
moon,
that
you know.
do 5-minute
Yeah,
exposures
yeah.
or 10-minute
Yeah.
that are totally synced. So on a kind of a gearing surface
Right.
system that is so tight that it just keeps everything going.
Well, and-
Because if you're off just a little
It's
bit,
blurry.
you get a
Yeah, it's
you get
blurry.
So, Seth, you're a photographer expert here. And so, everyone that's staying tuned for this episode right now and wanted to take a picture of the eclipse that's coming up in April 8th, how would you suggest doing that here?
Well, get a long lens because it's far away. If you want to get it to be as big as you can, 500, 600 millimeter lens. They make a filter that either screws or somehow attaches to the front of a hood of these lenses. You need the hood to see the sun, so you can focus on it And then when it's time for the actual, when it's time for the actual eclipse, you'd still use it taking pictures. Obviously, you'd use a wide open aperture. You'd put it on a low shutter speed. Sometimes you could use a fast shutter speed if you wanted to. Just get at the time when it's a corona type of thing. But if you use a slower shutter speed, you can get some really cool shots when the moon just starts to exit. I don't know what it's called, but there's a big, like a white coronal thing that looks really cool.
Like a flash almost.
So from about that point, you would then you can take the filter off and then just take pictures. And that's the same time when you're looking at the eclipse. Just generally, you can take your glasses off and just look at the eclipse, and it won't hurt your eyes for those 2 minutes or whatever the eclipse time
I just use a cell phone.
There you
No,
go.
you can't do that. You just
Be quick.
Okay, go ahead. Good luck.
I mean, I can
people
tell you
have done
about the tracker. If you're going to do magnification on there, obviously the
Well, you
moon
don't
is
need
not
it, yeah.
holding still.
Yeah, but this is the way I'm taking pictures. The longest exposure would be
60th of a second.
no 2 seconds. I started with a faster shutter speed and I bracketed all the way down. I started at I think a 1/25th of a second, bracketed all the way down to about a second, and I wanted to get to 4 seconds before the actual moon started to come out, and I wanted it to be when it was fully in there to get the like a big huge bright background
The corona.
of big huge thing effect. I've seen it before, but it's like a 4 to 6 second exposure. And had I started doing that in the beginning and then worked my way to a faster shutter speed, I could have done that better.
But that moon's going to move
Right.
in 4
Oh, yeah.
seconds. It's going to
Yeah,
move.
if you are and that's why they also say when you're taking a picture of night skies, you should not take a picture more than 15 seconds, because at that point the stars are going to move enough to cause that star to be a blur.
Got it.
Let's go the other round. One time we took a camera and put it on a tripod, focused it on the North Star, and took a cable release and made a 3-hour exposure. What do you think it looked like?
Spirals.
Yep. Completely around. In 3 hours, it was all these stars were big, long
Yeah.
trails.
What people do is they can say you have a phone or a picture like this, and you want that spiral to be in the center. You would point the center at the Polaris, and that's what would happen. If you want it off to the side, you can
Really
have
cool.
your picture and have it off in the corner.
Sure.
You just make sure that it's positioned there, and you focus on that, and then you can, while you're doing your 3-hour photos, you can take a flash and
Pop it at
pop
the end.
it at different
Uh-huh.
places, depending on where you are. If you're out in a field or if, sagebrush around here type of thing.
That'd look
But it's
cool.
kind of cool to do that.
Sure.
And then there's also the spirals that have little gaps. Have you seen those?
Sure.
That's where you do it for
They're shutting
40.
the
They're doing
star
40.
off.
They're doing like 40 minutes and then
Stopping.
stop for a couple minutes, 4 minutes, and
Come
then
back on.
Come back on for about 40, 45 minutes, and then
But
stop.
digital, the new world of digital makes photography so much easier.
Oh yeah, it's just that you can. It's like the instant Polaroid, where the old Polaroid cameras, you could take a picture, you could see almost instantly what it was or is, and now you have digital, which is
Immediately.
basically the same thing, only a smaller screen, but you can see exactly what you were taking a picture.
Photoshop
You
it
take a
and be done with it.
No, I don't like it.
Well, now you
Delete,
could
delete.
just AI it. You could just
AI.
tell Chat GPT, and I could have one in 2 seconds.
Have you been using that?
I've used it a couple times on different things. It's pretty cool. Well, we're going to leave the episode on that, talking about the
AI?
eclipse and AI. And everyone get your cameras out to a cell phone, but you got to be really quick, and the quality in that might not be that good. So get your dust off your digital camera, your Canon or whatever you got.
Get a good lens.
And
Get
if
a
we
good
all
lens.
disappear,
And if we all disappear,
If we go like in
I'll
the
leave a
Marvel,
note.
we blink.
watch The Simpsons if you want the full episode, but more.
We'll see on the other
the
side.
Bible tells you all about it.
We'll see on
right.
the other side.
There's a lot of secrets
See you
on
guys
the
on the other
Simpsons.
side. That's a good way to leave it on there. So it's Alden and Antonucci with Extreme Power Hour podcast. Stay tuned for the next one.